It was the mid-1700s when Captain James Cook, returning from his voyages in Polynesia, first introduced tattooed Tahitian natives to Europe. At about the same time, Immanuel Kant, the German philosopher, was writing about aesthetics, and he brought the tattooed Tahitians into his discussion. He asked, where is the natural beauty and the created beauty? Or where does the tattoo stop and the person start? Over the course of getting some 40 hours of tattoos myself, I've thought about Kant's question quite a bit, and I suspect those of you in the audience who have tattoos have also thought about this. So let's see how many people are implicated. How many of you have at least one tattoo? And then for my own curiosity, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's an inky bunch. It's an inky bunch. And fairly in line with national averages. You can see here from our graphic from the NBC News or Wall Street Journal that 40% of us live in a house in which someone has a tattoo. But look at the image the graphics department gives us. It purports to represent everyone, but it's hyper-masculine. It's a soldier, it's a sailor, it's a frat boy flexing. Masculine tattoo connotations. It's good, isn't it? Yeah. Masculine tattoo connotations, the rugged, the macho, the fraternal, they slip off the skin of women. On women, we think of tattoos as signifying that she is physically transgressive, she is rootless, loose, a troublemaker, and we don't ask, what's her story? Sailors' tattoos and the stories behind them are not the stories behind women's tattoos. Instead of asking what a woman's tattoos signify, we tend to see them as simply the symbols of bodily excess. So that if a woman is seen as an object with tattoos, she is seen as a lascivious sex object. If a woman is seen as nature with tattoos, she is seen as primitive. If a woman is seen as a spectacle with tattoos, she's a show, and the story's been written. It makes it seem as if we are culturally well-equipped to read women's tattoos. I'm not sure. Programs such as Ink Masters certainly gives us better vocabulary for thinking about tattoos and talking about tattoos, but there's still this tug of war between competing narratives. And we need to understand that women are not necessarily interested in punctuating the culture's symbolic gendered roles. The wife, the mother, the angel, the beauty, the victim, the whore. Whoop. Instead, our tattoos really act for us as resistance to these scripts. They allow us to make the double move of decolonizing the fashion beauty complex from our minds while allowing for the body play of art and masquerade. So what I want to argue is that we see tattooed women, or rather tattoos in general, as providing a revolutionary aesthetic for women. My tattoos, those you can see here for instance, are from a 5,000-year-old fresco which was excavated on the island of Thera or Santorini in Greece. And I'm not sure, yes, so what I have on my leg is this portion right here. There are 13 different birds in the whole piece. It's much larger than the photo you have. Perhaps more moving, however, would be how tattoos allow women to reassert control over their bodies when confronted with physical degradation. Most famously, we can turn to Dina Metzger's poster, released in 1971, that she had made after her radical mastectomy. And It contains a poem at the end of which it says, "On the book of my body is inscribed a tree." Another example for post-mastectomy work is to have reconstructive surgery, which necessarily involves a tattoo artist. And I like how these are playful celebrations. That nipple ring is also a tattoo. One more example from the Brazilian tattoo artist Flavia Carvalho. Her Skin of the Flowers project is offering free tattoos to cover the scars of domestic violence. If we take these together, we can start to think about this revolutionary feminist aesthetic. Aesthetics is what Kant was thinking about. Sandra Barkey calls for a revolutionary feminist aesthetic. And when I think about that, I think of tattoo and the skin as the perfect mode and site for this to happen. Our self-expression in tattoos is good for our ego, while at the same time, we don't need Revlon or Ralph Lauren to help us do that. In fact, this is important because styles do fluctuate, including tattoo styles, but tattoos aren't fashion. They are permanent, they are destructive, and they answer the call that performance artist Joanna Frew makes for monster beauty. They answer Mary Russo's demand for monstrification. These are new possibilities for body aesthetics. These are new ways of thinking about beauty. And yeah, that can be scary for some people. In fact, corporate self-help books tell women that we should hide our tattoos because they aren't professional. But I see that not professional as a kind of code for monstrous, a code for perhaps a troublemaker. But if we tap into a different gendered history of tattooing, we can find, yes, a battle over meaning, but also a kind of monster beauty that we can embrace and enjoy. So first, the example of battling over meaning. In 1920s in Boston, there was a rape trial in which the prosecutor realized that the raped woman had a tattoo, a butterfly. He asked that the case be summarily dropped, and judge and jury concurred that through her tattoo, through her butterfly, she had perhaps invited the gang rape through the otherwise inexplicable butterfly. Now, the vulgarity of the court's response is something that we see operating even today when we look at lower back tattoos and call them tramp stamps. Please, from now on, call them lower back tattoos. What these, the experience of the woman in 1920s Boston, as well as the women today, they're having this experience where they are criticized for their gender as well as their class. This is partially a class issue because particularly 100 years ago, working class women, by the demands of their lives, couldn't be pristine, indolent, 37 pounds of clothing, and yet they could access a different kind of decoration. They could access a different kind of beauty, the destructive decoration that is tattoo. And as tattoos bubbled up from working class women finding this alternative beauty to upper class women, we found that they too appreciated this beauty that flouts the possibility of untainted flesh. And at the time that upper class women were starting to do what the working class women had been doing, we were, as a culture, interested, again, in the exotic. We were interested in the concept of the freak. And tattoos allowed women to brush close to this idea of the freak. Freak shows were big business at the turn of the last century. They operated as sideshows in carnivals and circuses, and they, whatever, body bodily difference was big business. And for women in particular, they were interesting because, well, number one, they had fewer clothes on than the tattooed men shows, but also the stories they told were typically of tattoo rape. So it's not a new thing to think of sexual assault as entertainment. Starting in the 1880s with Nora Hildenbrandt, she would tell stories. Well, actually, let's look at this one. She would tell stories that were very similar to the stories told by other women on other stages. They were kidnapped by savages, forcibly tattooed, which was cast as torture, and then they presented their pathetic, ruined form on the sideshow stage. It made the woman that much more pathetic, and it made, of course, the savages that much more savage. But the interesting thing is that while the stories they told on stage bespoke one kind of life, in real life, in their real experience, they had more money, they had more opportunities for travel, they had more freedom than most other women. The stories they told on stage offered one thing, but their lives offered another. And that kind of doubling we encounter often from people who occupy society's boundaries. And carnivals and circuses often remind us of where our real boundaries are. But I want to tell you about a particular working woman who has been really important to me over the years. Betty Broadbent was participating in a sideshow in the 1939 World's Fair, and she decided to enter a beauty contest there. She didn't have a prayer of winning, but of course, in that moment, when she asked to be thought of as a beauty contestant, while she was still a freak show participant, she was 2 Barnum acts in one. And now, of course, the freak concept circulated widely in the 70s, I mean to say, when it was popular in the countercultural language of rock and roll. And hundreds of women lined up to get Janis Joplin's tattoo from Lyle Tuttle. Now those freaks are older, and they revel in their monster beauty without trying to contain evidence of such indiscretions as aging or eating or childbirth. And this is the last aspect of monster beauty I want to talk about, because to enjoy how our bodies age is something that we all need to come to terms with. And certainly, as you see the rest of my tattoos, or at least some of them up here, I've learned to love the ink rather than hate the skin. So there's the revolution. It's quiet, but it's colorful. Thank you.